Cofield and Company is live at the William Hill Sportsbook at Silver Sevens Hotel and Casino.
Big story of the day around Gina Carano, the former MMA fighter, was on The Mandalorian. Her contract was up. She's not being brought back. That's actually the correct terminology. She wasn't fired. But it's related to a continued string of crazy stuff she's been posting, inflammatory stuff she's been posting on social media. So, she's a person who grew up in Las Vegas. Her dad's a former UNLV quarterback, played in the NFL. Their family owns a major casino group. So this is a gigantic story, and it's gigantic on a lot of different levels. And our guy on MMA is Ariel Helwani, so we wanted to get him in. So great job tracking him down. Ariel, how are you, buddy?
Oh, Steve, it's great. I love you. You call me, once every 3-4 years when there's some major controversy. You don't want to talk about UFC 258 or some random show. Let's get down and dirty with the controversy. It's good to talk to you guys. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk to Adam as a Bills fan. I don't know if that's allowed anymore, but I'm here to extend the olive branch if you want.
You can say all you want. I mean, you'll be wrong, but you can say whatever you want.
Let's
Go ahead,
Steve.
I just want to say, I don't know why it infuriates me so much that he's still holding on to this stance, because I know how great of a Bills fan he once was, but I know you didn't have me on to talk about that, so we can save that for a different day.
Well, it is important because I actually think Adam sent out an insulting tweet the other day, and I don't blame you if you were mad. Yeah. He was rolling you in as some sort of racist because you like Josh Allen, and I thought Adam was very irresponsible in that.
Yes, as did I, and I told him that privately because I referred to Allen as our guy, not because he is white, but because we, meaning the Bills, drafted him, and I think he's a great quarterback and will be the quarterback to lead us to a Super Bowl. Adam, being a very passionate and loyal fan himself and a big fan of Mr. Taylor's, felt like the Bills made a mistake, and he was in the right to feel that way when they drafted Allen. I don't know how you can still feel that way. I understand he may have some issues with the fan base or some fans. Well, guess what? The Las Vegas Raider fans, I'm sure they're not all angels, and I'm sure the Vegas Golden Knights fans aren't angels, and Knicks fans and Bruins. There are bad fans everywhere. Does that mean you denounce your childhood team? I couldn't help but feel bad for Mr. Adam Hill when the Bills were having this amazing run and he could not enjoy it because I know he has suffered through some really lean years and he should be able to enjoy it. So I would like to see him get back on the bandwagon whenever he's ready.
This actually ties in, Ariel. I can make a segue. I'm a very professional radio guy now. I don't like. I was turned off from being a fan of any team by seeing somebody lead my beloved team to the playoffs and having him call racial slurs, and I'm like, I can't be a fan anymore. Kind of like it's tough to be an MMA fan sometimes when people that come from our world of MMA say ridiculously crazy things online.
It's actually a very good analogy. Obviously, we're covering the sport, but we're also fans of the sport, of course. And I couldn't feel the same way now. To take the analogy even further, I'm not denouncing MMA as a result of these lunatic people. I'm just, acknowledging their presence and hoping that people aren't too toxic with their comments and too inflammatory. But yes, there is an analogy to make there. And MMA over the past, year or so, you could really go back to the early days as well. There's always been some interesting characters, but there have definitely been some lowlights over the past year or so, some moments that have made me feel a little uncomfortable, some moments that have made me feel not so proud to be a member of the community, if you want to call it that. And I guess if you're going to take the analogy even further, we can put this particular case in that bucket as well.
Well, before we even get into kind of what happened, can you just kind of tell people your kind of a brief version of your history with Gina Carano? She's a big part of you coming up in this business.
Yes. I have not been shy about how I feel about Gina. First of all, she's a legend. I think she's a Hall of Famer. I'm not talking about the UFC Hall of Fame. If there ever was a legitimate independent MMA Hall of Fame, I think she would be a first ballot Hall of Famer for what she did for women's MMA and the doors that she opened. And coincidentally, all of this happened on the 14-year anniversary of her historic fight against Julie Kedzie on Elite XC on Showtime, their very first show. that was a massive deal for mixed martial arts. And for me, when she was coming up, I was coming up as well as an MMA journalist. She was one of the biggest stars, and she always gave me the time of day. And one particular moment meant a lot to me. Prior to the Elite XP on CBS debut in May of 2008, I was feeling very down about my career. I was getting a ton of hate online. And, you know, people, I remember there was a guy who used to write for a website called Cage Raider who used to call me a creep. And I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if you guys
He's a nobody now. He's a nobody.
Yeah. So people were very mean. And one time I interviewed her at the Hard Rock in Times Square. And we just kind of had a moment where, like, for a second, like, she helped me break the fourth wall and not take myself so seriously and not try so hard. And, you know, when I got banned by the UFC, she reached out to me, which meant a lot. A lot of people, fighters, did not. And so I always held her in high regard and was very happy for her when she got the Star Wars gig. And I still think she's a kind-hearted person. I think she's just, I don't know, I think maybe she's a little bit confused or maybe just made a really horrible analogy that I hope she feels bad about.
Well, you're a very nice person. I'm not willing to say she's confused. She's been posting stuff like this for months and months and months, so we're kind of bearing the lead.
She could still be confused. She could still be confused. I mean, I think that this is the problem with social media and the internet. Like, good people are having their points of view just, you know, poisoned by all kinds of crazy stuff. And the memes, trust me, I've noticed a trend. Don't get me wrong. I've noticed a troubling trend from her, and it has nothing to do with politics, by the way. I don't care if you support the right, the left, Trump, Biden. I do not care. But she has been posting some troubling things, I think, really over the past year or so, like really since the pandemic. And, you know, I would like to believe deep down that she's still the same kind-hearted person that we knew around a decade ago. But I think sometimes you get into these, you know, these dark holes and you start reading stuff and believing stuff and getting upset about things, and it leads to you having this warped view, this warped sense of reality.
It's the voice of MMA expert with ESPN, Ariel Helwani. This is what she wrote. We're bearing the lead here. People need to hear what she wrote and why Disney was like, you know what, she's not coming back. She said, Jews were beaten in the streets, not by Nazi soldiers, but by their neighbors, even by children. Because history is edited, most people today don't realize that to get to the point where Nazi soldiers could easily round up thousands of Jews, the government first made their own neighbors hate them simply for being Jews. How is that any different from someone hating someone for their political views? I know this hits home for you very closely. You are Jewish. Ariel Helwani's with us. So what do you make of that statement? That's confusion?
No, look, it's an asinine comment. It's disgusting. It makes my blood boil just having someone read it to me as opposed to me reading it myself. There's so many places you could go, and honestly, I've had a really hard time formulating my thoughts here because I do know Gina, and I do think that she is a good person, but to make a comparison to whatever is going on in today's world, to this political climate, to being a Republican, to having a different point of view, and making a comparison to what my people, and not just my people, by the way, minorities, it wasn't just Jews who died in the Holocaust, but of course 6 million did die, what they went through, and she was pointing out that particular post, what they went through in the 30s and 40s is just, it's absolutely disgusting. I mean, these are people who were, who had to hide in gutters, who had to hide in attics, who were, separated from their families, who were put in trains and were shoved in ovens and were put in gas chambers. I went to Auschwitz in 1999. I went on a trip called the March of the Living. I sat in the gas chamber and I was able to feel with my fingers the scratch marks that were there. People tried to crawl out of a gas chamber that was killing them and their family and their brothers and their babies. And I saw with my own eyes the mountain that I think is 7 or 8 football fields long of ashes. I saw the hair that's still there. I saw the glasses that are still there, the suitcases of people thinking that they were going on a trip, the dolls that were there. And to make a comparison to being a Republican in 2021, what those people went through, and to say that it was the neighbors and the kids that were, the ones who initially were pushing them out of the house, just all you have to know is about Anne Frank, who lived in an attic for years, a young girl who had to write about that, and eventually, it's just no one's being murdered right now, all right? And, if we want to talk about what happened in January, the only murdering that was being done was on the other side. So, listen, it was a ridiculous comment. But going back to the confusion statement, I would like to believe that she made a horrible mistake, a horrible analogy, and I would also like to believe that she is just not educated on what the Holocaust was and what actually transpired there. She feels that she's a victim right now, and she's comparing herself to another group of people who were victims a long time ago. But I have some bad news for her. Whatever she is feeling right now is nowhere near the stratosphere of what those people felt back in the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, but Ariel, people send mean tweets about Gina when she supports Trump.
Exactly. I mean, it's ludicrous, and that's why I say social media is a dangerous place. You feel like you're being ganged up on, and all of a sudden you feel like you're a victim, and you start comparing yourself to things that you see online, and it's just ludicrous. Like I said, I'm not trying to make this about myself. I hope that doesn't come across that way, but it feels like a personal thing because I know her, and because she's an important person in our little world, and because I'm Jewish. And my people have been persecuted, very much so, and not just in the Holocaust. My grandfather was kidnapped by the PLO in the late 70s and was put in jail, and my grandmother as well when they lived in Lebanon. Like, these stories hit home, and when I see someone who is being attacked on Twitter or Instagram comparing themselves to that, I don't even know how to put it into words. It's the craziest thing in the world. And what I actually told her management team was, why don't you guys get her off social media? Like, who's allowing this to happen? Who's trying to educate her? And we're talking not just this week. I'm talking about months ago. Why are you letting this happen? Because it's very clearly going down a bad path. Like, enough with the memes, enough with the commentary. You can't be a part of Hollywood and expect there be no repercussions to any of this. So maybe we should just take a break from all of this, take a deep breath, and not be posting memes all the time. And unfortunately, she didn't do that, and now you see what happened. And by the way, can I just say, I'm not celebrating this. I'm not happy she got fired. I hope it doesn't come across that way. I'm actually sad she got fired. I'm sad for her. I'm not a fan. Like, I was looking yesterday at all these people celebrating her demise. I'm not a fan of that. I'm not a fan of the idea of everyone thinking that we can gang up on someone and ruin their life. I'm sad it came to this, and I sincerely hope that she understands what she did and is better because of it.
And let's be clear, it's not cancel culture, it's consequence culture. Like, she did this. That is
100%. 100%. I'm just saying, I can see people thinking like, and I searched her name, right, and it'd be like, we need to get Gina Carano fired today. Like, of course there's a mob mentality online. There's a lot of bad things online. I don't even know what the hell woke means, and like, I don't know what any of this stuff means. I'm not smart enough for any of this stuff. All I know is that comparing anything happening today, and like, I could walk outside my house with my dog right now and not be afraid of a cop shooting me because I'm Jewish, or someone not asking me to wear a yellow star to differentiate myself from my neighbor, or putting me in an oven, or and that's what she was comparing herself to, and that's just incredibly, incredibly offensive and insensitive.
It's the voice of Ariel Helwani from ESPN, the legend in the MMA world. I'll say it for
wow.
you. Me and Steve have talked about this. Is this a problem in MMA? Is this an MMA problem? Because it's not just her. There's others that have some, kind of out there beliefs. And as Steve mentioned, like, when they purged a bunch of the Q accounts from Twitter in the last couple of months, all of us in the MMA world lost a lot of followers from that. Like, a lot of people that are following us kind of believe in the same things.
I don't know. Honestly, I will say this. I don't think it's an MMA problem. I think there's as many people, if we want to just keep this to the sports world, who have these beliefs. I just think that because MMA in particular is still a bit of the Wild West, that, there's no real consequences to this thing. I mean, witness the fact what Colby Covington said about Black Lives Matter and everything surrounding his fight against Karen Woodley. And when Dana White was asked about it, what did he say? He's like, oh, we don't censor, what our fighters say. Like, at some point, there has to be some kind of line, right? And, the UFC, which is the biggest brand in the sport, historically, they don't try to get involved in that sort of thing like other sports leagues do. And I know that the UFC is in a league. It always drives me nuts when people compare Dana White to a commissioner. He's not a commissioner. He's an owner. he's at the end of the day going to look out for the best interests of the UFC, and there's going to be different standards. You know, Conor McGregor is going to throw a dolly at a bus. It's going to be a lot different than if, say, Ray Borg is throwing that dolly at the bus. You all know that to be true as well. So I don't know if there's an issue in MMA. I just think it gets magnified in MMA because there are no consequences in MMA, and there's no real set of standards. There's no guidelines. You know, you can pretty much do whatever you want. I can assure you someone who plays for, I don't know, the Charlotte Hornets is going to think twice about saying something like this because, you know, there's a commissioner and there's like a whole set of rules in place to try to, you know, not have people talk about things that could be viewed as offensive. There's none of that in UFC, right?
Yeah, I think it's great. Those are great points.
But I do believe Dana White is the voice of the sport. He doesn't have to rep Gina Carano now that she's out of the sport. But there's a subculture that's very dangerous. There should be a line. You mentioned it. And you and I have actually talked off the air. I was texting with you a couple of months ago. One of the reasons that we don't cover a whole lot of MMA anymore, and there's a bunch of them, but one of them is I'm very disturbed by this subculture and the fact that there are a lot of fans who appear to be Q or racist or especially anti-Semitic, and it really bothers me, and it's not something I want to be a part of.
Oh, yeah. Well, just look at the comments on my post anytime. I mean, I posted something about Gina after thinking about it for a while, and just go look at those comments. It's upsetting, and you sometimes think to yourself, like, man, I'm a part of this community that doesn't like people like me or doesn't feel the same way that I feel. And I feel like it's okay to have different point of views. Ultimately, though, you know, there's a big difference between having a different point of view and being offensive and being insulting towards others. And I think over the past few months, yeah, there were moments where I was, you know, I won't lie, I was a little disappointed in seeing what some people were saying and in seeing what some people weren't saying in light of what some other people were saying. If you catch my drift, it was certainly disappointing. It really was. I can't say I was ultimately surprised by any of it, but you know, I love when the people who tell us to stick to sports are also the ones who are, you know, most vocal about some other things. And I was ultimately disappointed with the way the UFC handled that situation with Colby and Tyron. I think that's kind of like where it reached its peak because, you know, Colby was saying things like, and I'm paraphrasing, but like, you know, Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group and all this type of stuff. At the point that we are at in our country right now, and as a people, and especially right before the election, like none of that was productive. And I would have liked to have seen the UFC say, hey, man, you know, tone it down. I mean, the UFC, by the way, who tells us, like, we don't like, you know, dancing on the way to the cage, or we don't like costumes and having fun, but, like, all that stuff is okay? Really? It's, you know, yeah, I agree with you. There are times where you kind of have to sit back and be like, gosh, what does this all mean, and what does this sport represent?
Ariel, you're awesome. I know this is not an easy subject to talk about, and you know, like we said, it's very close to home. The audience could hear that, so we appreciate you.
I don't even know if what I said is coherent, so I apologize.
No, it was.
I'm sort of like going through my thoughts on, like, freshly with you guys because I haven't really been able to talk about it. So this was cathartic for me. I'm sorry if I was rambling, and I still feel like Adam's making a huge mistake by not being a Bills fan.
Let's have you on down the road. I know you were joking earlier. I think you were about coming on, but yeah, we'll talk some Bills, and we got to talk some Knicks as well. MMA, I'm not so sure, but we'll make that decision. Maybe there'll be some progress.
I look forward to being on in 5 years when there's another controversy. I mean, I used to be Jewelers of Las Vegas. Where have you gone?
I know.
I remember those days. Right? Oh, gosh.
All right, Ariel. Thank you so much.
See you guys.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Yeah, there he is. Ariel Helwani. This is really close to home for him.